Together we can show the world what we can do. You are next to me.
Wait, I hate soda. Why the fuck did I buy this?
Many of you are probably curious about what the opening skit has to do with the video topic. Absolutely nothing at all. I've always had a bit of a fascination with the woods, whether we're talking the real thing or a fictional setting. I imagine that partially has to do with the environment I grew up in being pretty heavily forested and my family's backyard leading into the woods. As a kid, I'd played there a lot. I guess I'm also a bit of a tree hugger, but trees are good friends and they've always been there for me, so don't judge. While the forest is one of the more commonly used environmental themes in really any medium, they're also one of the more versatile. In addition to the various different types of woodlands on the planet, atmosphere ranges from vibrant and inviting to desolate and haunting. Video games kinda do them on a relatively frequent basis, so yeah. And what better video topic could there be to celebrate spring's arrival? At least if the snow is finally done for the year, jungle and swamp levels will be counted as they are technically forests, albeit different variants on them. Really, anything counts as long as it has trees, wildlife, and possibly a dead YouTube career. Anything that destroys Logan Paul is automatically number 1 in my book. Kicking off the top 10, we've got Forbidden Jungle from Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. I know, not exactly the most imaginative title, but considering this game has levels named Boggy Swamp, Snowy Mountain, and Goddamn Rock Village, you could do a whole lot worse. As soon as you even cross the bridge and set foot in the jungle, you immediately take in everything that this exotic setting has in store. It all just explodes with plant and animal life. You've got your fish, giant snakes, lurkers, and hentai tentacles?
More like fetish?
Stop it. Get some help.
Sprinkled throughout the location are a number of wooden constructions like bridges and traps, which I imagine are probably for something like hunting or defending the giant structure in the center of the map. Regardless, whatever their purpose is supposed to be, they are very bad at fulfilling it. The landscape is pretty dense, with cliff sides, waterfalls, and streams all over the place, in addition to the thick vegetation engulfing the entire area. Both of these things work together and give the Forbidden Jungle the kind of playful vibe that a child would get from wandering and playing around in the woods. The game's day and night cycle, while just cosmetic at the end of the day, results in a very notable shift in mood. During daylight, everything's all happy-go-lucky and cheerful, if you can ignore all the animals that want to eat you alive, while at night, the atmosphere simultaneously becomes peaceful with all the gorgeous scenery, and frightening with all the predators in the environment. Just look at those eyes. This is the shit that keeps me inside, people. There's also a bit of interesting contrast with the metal eco-temple and all the industrial machinery around it. Going from a vibrant, overgrown patch of land to a hollow, soulless shell, which apparently got taken over by a derpy-looking flower, because why the hell would it not? Overall, it's just a fun, charming level, except for the fishing part. This is the physical embodiment of no. On the topic of bright, colorful games that are easy to pick up and play, yes, my favorite video game, Cuphead Blood Soul. So yeah, we're going from Jak and Daxter to Bloodborne. Next time on Jarring Transitions, we'll go from PUBG to a game that's actually optimized. When it came to the Forbidden Woods, I admittedly didn't have the greatest first impression about it, mostly because of the layout initially confusing the fuck out of me, and the setting just not grabbing me as much as previous locations in the game. Though as time went on, the Forbidden Woods really grew on me to the point of being one of my favorite areas in Bloodborne. If I had to choose only one word to describe this place, I'd go with intimidating. Not exactly in a spoopy, shit-your-pants horror kind of way, but a way that induces paranoia with every step you take. The forest is full of enemies and obstacles that can kill you easily. You know they're around and ready to strike, but have no way of telling when or where they're going to. My experience here was half suspicious of everything, and half screaming at the top of my lungs in anger after dying about a billion times. I could practically taste the sodium chloride I was emitting. No matter where you go in the forest, there's always this unsettling feeling that you're surrounded by death. Corpses and tombstones litter the entire landscape, a village you come across is torn to shreds, and every living thing you see is an atrocity to nature that won't hesitate to rip you apart. The vibe I get from this dim, foggy environment is the kind of mythical place where a soul would go after their mortal body dies. Even more than a good majority of Bloodborne's other locations, the Forbidden Woods made me feel the most alone and isolated. Even with all of the evil wolf people that want you dead, most other places in the game gave me a faint glimmer of hope that somewhere out there was somebody that would help me out if I found them. I did not get that here due to the atmosphere being desolate and the faces that don't decide to kill you being kinda shady still. This place is bleak, sinister, macabre, and I love it. I wouldn't want to shove a sword up a giant pig's rectum any other place in the world. Yes, you actually do that in the game. Sonic Unleashed is a good video game. Pay no attention to anybody who calls it worse than Imagine Party Babies. Fucking what? I mean, that game is an unsung masterpiece, don't get me wrong, but come on now. So yeah, Jungle Joyride. Set in the region of Adabat based on southeastern Asia, each act of Jungle Joyride gives you quite a bit to sightsee. Usually starting off in a village that's supported by stilts over the water, the scenery transitions quite a bit between long stretches of jungle foliage, rocky cliffsides, sandy beaches separated by the coastline, ancient ruins, and a region pretty much entirely dominated by enormous waterfalls. For levels that can easily be beaten in a matter of minutes, they pack in quite a bit for the player to run through, and none of it ever feels like it's been shafted. Speed here is not only encouraged, but outright demanded. Split-second reactions are more important here than probably any other levels in Unleashed, and boosting is required to run across the water like Jesus after his 50th cup of coffee. Nighttime stages are comparatively more reserved, mainly taking place around the coastline, but after the insanity of the daytime acts, they are a relaxing change in pace. Listening to that peaceful piano melody, taking a slow, casual walk across the pier, ripping enemies apart, you know, the ideal vacation. It's hard to believe that Unleashed is getting close to being 10 years old and visually holds up this well. Nothing from the days of unregistered hypercam and 009 sound system deserves to look this good. The art direction already looks pleasing as it is, but the insane amount of detail put into the day stages combined with the speed of everything surprises me when my console isn't set on fire. Seriously, it's so intense that the frame rate drops to about 10 FPS.
The true cinematic experience right there.
The shadows and lighting in the forested section and the amazing water effects alone make this one of the best looking levels in the whole series, all together in a setting with a mind-blowing sense of scale. The torchlights and the distant sunset illuminating the werehog stages are beautiful in their own right and feel like something you'd see from a tropical festival or nighttime ritual. Everything's given a really tight execution, and all that's missing is a frame rate that's not complete ass. If the game got ported to better hardware, I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue at all. Maybe it might one day happen since people actually seem to like this game now. Oh hey, Dust good. Play Dust. I've talked about Dust and Elysian Tale on more than one past occasion, almost like it's one of my favorite games or something like that. The first two areas that you visit in the game, those being the Glade and Abadi's Forest, are pretty thematically identical if you were to do a side-by-side comparison, but by virtue of me just getting a lot more out of Abadi's Forest, that's the level I'll go with here. The way I see it, the Glade is a small taste of what's to come, but Abadi's Forest is the game ensuring the player that they're in for one hell of a journey. I'll first address the doggo in the living room.
Hey, Biddy, how are you? You're good, doggo.
Now I'll address the elephant in the room by talking about how fucking gorgeous this level is. The animation is so intricate and beautifully drawn. Everything just explodes with color and life, while the scenery transitions so naturally between the midst of a forest, a view of the mountainsides, and even a forested area glimmering underground. Each part of the map is distinguishable and recognizable from the others, leaving very few parts that look totally identical. The way everything is lit even more emphasizes an enchanting feel and gives off the kind of vibe that you get from a 2D animated film from Don Bluth or the Disney Renaissance. It's no Blackmore Mountains or Everdon Basin, but damn if it ain't pretty. The soundtrack makes the Abadi's Forest feel like the true beginning of your long journey ahead, and even separated from the game is just a peaceful, beautifully composed piece of music. I'd say one of the more memorable pieces from Dust's already great soundtrack. The whole location is laid out pretty well for combat, giving you a number of places that force you into close quarters fighting, in addition to more open spots that allow you to fly and zoom all over the place when slicing up these airborne assholes. There's no way to get everything on your first visit unless you cheat, you fucking bastard, so there is some optional replay value here if you decide to return with new abilities and access spots that were previously out of reach. Though everything goes from all hunky-dory to hello darkness my old friend when you find a village that's been burned and destroyed beyond salvation, and some guy named Fuse who went insane. The boss against him is pretty meh, but the aftermath is just heartbreaking. This entire place just embodies the kind of beauty and emotion that animation can inspire while executing it in the form of a fun level. So yeah, I like. Mario Odyssey is a damn good game. Probably goes without saying, with it getting more praise than Jesus Christ, but you know, very good reason for why it does. Sorry, Jesus, I imagine you probably didn't die for this, but dude, you gotta understand. One of the biggest strengths with Odyssey is how every world you visit feels unique and fresh compared to the Mario norm. In addition to the wild, outlandish level themes for many of the regions, even a number of the more popular level tropes overflow with imagination. Case in point, the Wooded Kingdom, or Steam Gardens if we're being specific here. This entire region combines plant life together with metalwork, and it looks very, very pretty. The lush green forest is beautiful on its own, but when paired together with the vibrant warm colors used for the iron structures, I need at least 3 new pairs of pants every time I visit this place. As opposed to the iron structures being some monstrosity tearing up the place, or being overtaken by the course of time, instead they're intertwined with the landscape and as big a part of the environment as the trees, ivy, grass, and water. The whole kingdom gives off a vibe of nature and machinery coexisting together in harmony, especially since the robotic inhabitants use it to grow flowers. It's just so pure and wholesome, and I love it. I got a strong feeling that all those flowers would make my allergies go apeshit because pollen exists for the sole purpose of trying to kill me, but oh well. Starting off in a completely forested area, the only sound that you can hear is that of nature to draw you into the game's atmosphere. You know, rushing water, birds chirping, wind, the personification of your existential crisis. Normal stuff really. Though when you get to the Iron Road, you begin to hear this sort of chill mechanical sounding melody that brings the whole place to life. Of all the levels in Odyssey, Wooded Kingdom is among the most successful with taking advantage of the mechanics at your disposal. There's very few restrictions on what you can do when platforming, with the entire place being a wide open jungle gym that lets the player play how they see fit. Feel like just using your own wits combined with Hat Boy Cappy? That's cool. Do you wish to possess the mind of an uproot and use it to reach higher platforms against its will? Go for it, you deranged bastard. Quite the showcase of creativity from the folks at Nintendo, I've gotta say. Oh, and if you're feeling extra ballsy, try going into the deep woods. That huge dinosaur from the Cascade Kingdom is a hell of a lot more scary when it's awake and trying to eat you. It's like Jurassic World with only about 20% of the parental divorce drama. You know about Kashyyyk, that one Star Wars planet with all of the Wookiees that first appeared in the holiday special, and also showed up in that one prequel that didn't suck, at least not as badly as the other two did? Yeah, we're talking about it now. Specifically, the Shadowlands of Kashyyyk from Knights of the Old Republic. The game's approach to this planet is a bit out of the ordinary compared to how it's usually shown throughout Star Wars media. In contrast to the large, open D-Day-esque coastlines that Kashyyyk is most known for, the Shadowlands consist of a cramped forest of enormous trees that reach about as high as a skyscraper. You start off at the higher level of the forest, comprised of a fairly large settlement of tree houses. Most of what happens here is shady corporate shit, corruption within the government, and in general, a bunch of dick measuring competitions between everybody. So yeah, it's basically the USA, except in the trees. And with furry people. While I'm not exactly sure about whether any of this is canon or not, it is pretty interesting to get a glimpse of what Wookiee culture and traditions consist of, at least during the time period of KOTOR. The whole place has this sort of primitive tribe-like feel to it, with the inhabitants often priding themselves on fighting capabilities and enduring their rite of passage. On that note, God help your soul when you venture forth down below into the Shadowlands. This is described as a place where the Wookiees go for the rite of passage, and all I've gotta say is that those who actually lived through this deserve a fucking medal. Like the one that Chewie never got. This place is the definition of unwelcoming. You're so far down into the forest that sunlight literally cannot shine through the foliage up top, so darkness engulfs pretty much the entire region. Combine that with fog all over the place, and yeah, feels like the perfect environment for something to jump out and rip you apart. Predators and aggressive mean dudes are everywhere and ready to pounce on you, like a Star Wars fan toward anybody that enjoys the movies that aren't A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. The models haven't exactly aged all that well, but the atmosphere conveyed down in this part of Kashyyyk is pretty bone-chilling. As much as I wanted to scram and get out of the place, it was really fun to play through and one of the locations that stood out the most to me from the game. Also, this is the place where you meet Jolie Bindo, and he is cool. The thought of what this place could look like with current-gen graphics causes my imagination to run wild. Though that's probably not gonna happen, so I'll just wait for when the internet stops pretending that Last Jedi is a bad movie.
I am not sorry.
I'm pretty love-hate when it comes to Prime 2, but what the game does get right, it nails really frickin' well. I'm not a fan of half the game being set in some bland, tedious dark world, like, at all, but I love going through pretty much all of the game's normal areas. My favorite of all of them, hands down, is Tortoise Bog. Well, that or maybe Sanctuary Fortress, but we ain't gonna be talking about that because I don't see any forest around here. As expected from the Prime trilogy, the environmental storytelling here is nothing short of incredible. The game does a phenomenal job selling the setting as a place that was once important among the Luminoth before disaster struck. The whole forest and many of the buildings have been flooded with water, and a landscape that had once been vibrant and inviting is now murky and depressing. Really, the whole planet of Aether's been in pretty bad shape ever since it got hit by a Leviathan. An alternate dimension is torn open, the inhabitants are at conflict with the Ing, and the landscape is a bigger desolate wasteland than Channel Awesome.
Okay, I imagine most of you didn't want to see such a brutal disaster brought up in this video. So, my apologies. I'm sorry you felt that way.
But while Tortoise also got affected, more than the other locations you visit, it feels the most like a beacon of hope that this devastated world may eventually recover. Even when shrouded in the clouds and rain, it feels like there's traces of beauty shining through, and it feels great when you manage to clear the weather and allow the sunlight to illuminate the forest. At least how I see it, this place is a remnant of a better past, and simultaneously a peek into a better future. The whole bog has this sort of mysterious alien-like feel reinforced by the exotic unearthly plant life and all the creatures inhabiting the ruins above the surface and below the water. The music tracks from both levels of Tortoise Bog give off a bit of a mystical aura where you can't help but want to uncover what remains in this bizarre wetland. Navigating the water can be a bit tedious at times, with everything being so cloudy and movement being restricted until you get the proper upgrade, but even that's easy enough to look over in my opinion. Guess it just goes to show that even the weakest game in the Prime trilogy has a lot to its merit. Ori is a good... Seriously, if you haven't played Ori and the Blind Forest, you're missing out on one of my favorite games from the past decade. Sure, it may be exclusive to Xbox One, but just like every other Xbone exclusive that isn't cancelled or garbage, you can buy it on PC.
Probably very obvious, but Microsoft is so very clearly a company with a lot of passion and faith dedicated towards their console division. Good job, Microsoft. A+. A+.
You can probably deduce that a game titled Ori and the Blind Forest is set within a forest, and you'd be right. The Forest of Nibel encapsulates pretty much all of the game, but anything I could say about one area of the forest can equally apply to any others, so fuck it. It'd just be easier to include the whole thing here. When you first begin playing the game, the condition of the forest is, quite frankly, not that great. By that, I mean it's all dark with very little light to be found, the water is poisonous, and all life is either dead or on the brink of death while being covered up and taken over by demons or some shit. It ain't the most lively sight to behold at the beginning, but everything does start looking a lot less cataclysmic as you go through the game. Even within all the dead plant life is still a substantial amount of foliage that's alive and vibrant, allowing a great deal of beauty to overpower the more depressing scenery. There's so much attention to detail put into the look of this place, with the lighting giving each part of the forest its own distinct atmosphere, and every square inch of the game being utilized. There's not a single part of the forest that looks dull, and it only gets prettier and prettier with how much life you bring back. I swear, a good chunk of Ori's appeal is witnessing how much the environment heals after you bring a natural element back to the forest. The poisonous water becomes safe to swim in again, ignoring the whole possibility of drowning thing, and all the areas that minor gusts of wind escape through are now blowing out air with great force. With how it's designed as an actual level, or game world in this case, the Forest of Nibel works in a great deal of ground for the player to utilize the buttery smooth movement to run and climb through with a lot of fluidity. It gives off the kind of emotion I'd get from exploring and running through the woods as a child, and adding water and wind into the mix just opens up the environment more and more. To think this was all made with Unity. If only that engine was used more for games like this instead of the billion asset flips placed on Steam every fucking day. There are a lot of forests in The Legend of Zelda. Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, those CDI tumors. They're pretty frequent in these games, and each time they manage to put a unique spin on this ever so common setting. There's a good number of reasons why any one of them could be somebody's favorite, except for the CDI titles, unless you're mentally fucked in the head. As for myself, the Faron Woods from Twilight Princess is my top pick. This part is mostly just build up to the Forest Temple, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I enjoyed my trek through the woods notably more than the dungeon it was leading to. No discredit to the Forest Temple, it's a pretty decent first dungeon, but Faron Woods just has this charming feel I have yet to see replicated. The whole place gives off this otherworldly vibe like the kind you'd get from a grim, dark fairy tale. Faron Woods in its normal state has a bit of a creepy feel at first glance, not helping that you initially visit the place in the Twilight Realm where everything's distorted as hell. That haunting melody and overpowering, almost demonic lighting that dominates the Twilight Realm makes me feel all sorts of paranoid about the unknown. But venturing further on in the normal realm, you'll find yourself in a land that's surprisingly inviting, not counting all of the monsters that want your head on a plate. It may not have the most vibrant color, this is Twilight Princess after all, but as far back back as I can tell, this was the first area where the game's attempt at a more realistic Zelda truly amazed me in terms of art direction. It's one of the areas in Twilight Princess that resonated with me the most. That beautiful water spring, the black cave illuminated by warm orange light from the torches, and my favorite, the northern part of the forest shrouded in darkness and thick fog. Take a look at the scenery and soak it all in because damn, it purty. You are brought to a crawl when going through this part, but if only I had any fucks to give. I'll take any excuse to stare at this part as much as possible. Faron Woods does rely pretty heavily on production values, and lucky for it, they're top notch. It's one part of your journey through the game where you just want to slow down and soak everything in. Also, it's got monkeys, so 10 out of 10. Wait, I think they're actually apes. 10 out of 10.
If you were to take the phrase cute as heck, isolate the word heck from the rest of the phrase, and replace the H with a P, you would get...
I should probably stop being so vulgar. On the surface, A Hat in Time is a very wholesome experience, but deep down, it's got some demons, and no part of the game demonstrates this more than Subcon Forest. The main structure of Subcon Forest is about Hat Kid undertaking tasks via contract. Think of the whole selling your soul to the devil trope, since that's essentially what this is. Though in this instance, the whole concept is executed in a more satirical manner. The Snatcher, who tries to be this frightening, evil spirit lurking in the woods, stumbles pretty much every time and becomes just a normal boss. In more than one way, actually. Instead of the contracts having Hat Kid form some kind of blood pact with the Snatcher or some shit like that, they assign her the most hilariously mundane tasks. Cleaning a well, delivering mail, cleaning a toilet, at least before it tries to kill you. All the real reasons people play video games. Also, Queen Vanessa's Manor. The whole level is such a humorous, clever parody on this typically serious trope, and the Snatcher's amazingly dramatic performance really makes it all work with how it's all played completely straight. The way Subcon Forest is structured, with all the objectives being contract-based, makes for a method of non-linearity unique to this chapter. You're free to go about doing all of the missions in any order you desire, which is pretty neat. They individually take you to a number of unique places throughout the region, whether it be through the normal forest, underground into a spring of water, or the icy cold home of Queen Vanessa. Each mission is given its own kind of charm, and the outstanding cel-shaded visuals help quite a bit with that. In my opinion, this is hands down the best looking chapter in A Hat in Time, which is saying a lot. Every little detail makes for a visually rich environment. I swear I can practically feel the change in temperature when going in between parts of the level with different colored lighting. While it is a humorous play on your typical haunted forest, a lot of care was still put into generating such an environment, and it shows. All the fire spirits asking to basically die, the darker color scheme of the main forest, Act 4's everything. Even if not intended to be done in a serious manner, the atmosphere of Subcon Forest absolutely nails the haunted feeling, just with the general quirkiness of A Hat in Time added on top. Nearly every aspect of the chapter hits all of my sweet spots, and really that's the biggest reason why it's at the top. The only thing that would make the level better is if there were cats. That doesn't have anything to do with the video, cats just make everything better. That's scientifically factual. Google it.